He's all walking out there. Spurs player Paulinho there. Do you think this is the first team? Do you think this is the starting lineup? How many are we talking about?
We're talking. It wouldn't be my strongest back four because I'm not a David Luiz fan.
Yeah.
Now I would think Dante would replace him, in my opinion. But David Luiz has played a lot of the games. Marcelo at left back, Paulinho in the middle, Neymar, obviously Oscar, Hulk, and Fred. I would say that's a given. Now whether you put Willian in there, Ramirez in there, the Chelsea boys at certain times. It's a great debate because the standard of the players they've got makes that 1 to 11 so hard to pick.
David Jones was touching on a bit earlier that, say, players like Neymar struggle with Barcelona because obviously every weekend, week in, week out, they're the stronger side and people sit back.
Yeah.
They're going to do something similar to Brazil, but Brazil play in a much quicker way, don't they?
Well, I think I look at their group and you think Croatia, Mexico and Cameroon, that's quite a difficult group in my opinion. I would expect them to get through, obviously. But tonight will be a little bit of a test, and you would imagine Serbia will provide what yourself and David are saying, where they might sit back and be hard to beat, because there's not a lot of goals on this Serbian side. I think Ivanović is the second top scorer of the centre-half, so interesting to see how they do tonight. You know, they struggled, they couldn't get out of their group. They struggled big time, couldn't get ahead of Belgium and Croatia, so they finished third. So there might be a little test, as in, have Brazil got the patience? But I would expect the Brazil side to keep the ball off Serbia, wear them down, and with the quality that they've got from 1 to 11, we'll have far too much to win this game.
Very interesting to read what Scolari was saying, that he was very unhappy that they left themselves against Panama open to a counter-attack. Because that is the biggest fear, because you see Dani Alves doesn't like to hold back when he plays for Barcelona, and he definitely won't be in that golden shirt of Brazil either. I
would have thought when you said to Dani Alves and to Marcelo, can you please just stay as a back four and stay in your slots, he was no comprende. He just bombs on and does his own thing, and that's what's made him the best right back in the world. You know, it's a fine line between going for things and bombing on and getting areas in possession further up the field, or sitting in and being hard to beat. That might come later in the tournament where the quality of the teams gets stronger. But I think early doors and tonight and early fixtures in the World Cup, I expect these two fullbacks especially to bomb on. Yeah, and what sort of style of football do you think we'll get in this Brazilian World Cup? Because obviously the conditions are going to be intense. They're going to be possession of football is going to be very important. Does that suit this sort of Brazilian side? Yes, I think it does. I think it does. It suits the South American sides. I think because, you know, I've said, I disagree with David when he says Germany can win the World Cup, and I don't think England can neither. I think the only European side that can win is Spain, because they keep the ball, and they're willing to keep the ball for long periods of the game. Now, when I look at Brazil and Argentina and Uruguay, they can keep the ball for slow periods of the game, slow it down, then they can go a little bit longer, but they've got very, very good players. Yeah, you're probably seeing the Serbian players there, likes of Ivanović there with those T-shirts on. Serbia needs help. That is in relation to the floods in Serbia. Always a very difficult time for players when there are things back at home. But you look at that side and you can't believe some of those players there with the experience they've got that didn't make it to the World Cup. But as you say, they will provide a very tough test, a sort of test that Brazil need. They will, and you think if Matic is playing the centre of the field, Ivanović and Kolarov at Man City, you look at that team. Haven't seen them on paper yet, but it looks like a good side. It looks like a defensive side, as I said before, and David said before. There's not a lot of goals in this team. You know, they're a little bit light and a little bit experienced up front, inexperienced, should I say, up front. So it will be a test for them, and it'll be a test for them players. And it's always great when you come up against the likes of Brazil. You know, they're a fantastic outfit. The golden shirts. It's the romance of the World Cup. Everyone wants to copy Brazil, and everyone wants to watch the way they play. Yeah, I still can't believe, as you say, that David Luiz is the centre of defence. He seems suited more in this side to be just in front, doesn't he? I would have thought so. I would have thought so. But he has played a lot of the games at centre-half. I think it depends on what you want as a centre-half. Do you want a Dante who's physical, or do you want a ball-playing centre-half? It all depends on the individual in Phil Scolari, really. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how he plays that man. And the Hulk and Neymar over this World Cup, whether it's a sort of a three-pronged attack or whether it's going to be one man up front and two behind. Yeah, well, I think it's good for a start that we're not seeing any sort of false number nines like Spain sort of go. I like tradition. I like to see Fred and I like to see Hulk up front, and then that makes room for the likes of Neymar. The number 10, he wants space to work in. there's no point in having these flair players, these number 10s like the Barkleys and the Neymars and the Messis if other teams are going to nullify their space. So I think that's why, for me, you have 2 centre forwards to take the edge off it.
You know, it looks as if to get in the Brazil team, you've got to have masses of curly hair by the looks of it.
Which rules me out.
Be interested to see, actually, how the stadia cope as well this World Cup with the pitches. A lot of people saying they're not going to be up to scratch.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the build-ups on a telly back home, and some sad sights in and around the favelas around in Brazil. So hopefully for them, the Brazilian national sort of side and the country, they have a good tournament. More trouble-free, we hope. And I think everyone that loves their football wants the big countries to succeed, and these are certainly one of those.
Well, that is the national anthems done. That's the man that everybody is looking forward to seeing. It's Brazil against Serbia. Brazil's last warm-up match before the World Cup gets underway. Let's watch all of the action now in the very capable, safe hands of Paul Dempsey and David James. Paul Dempsey, good evening to you, sir.
And Chris, thank you very much. Good evening to you and hello everybody. The greatest show on earth, the greatest footballing nation. It should be the perfect pairing. We already know that the preparation has been less than perfect across the nation at large. But for the football crazy populace of Brazil, this team, every man, every woman are behind them. And it's pretty much to what we think is Felipe Scolari's first choice 11 to try to bring the trophy back to Brazil for the 6th time. The 2 changes tonight. In the back 4, Thiago Silva returns. He was rested for the midweek game. And further forward, there's a return for Paulinho, as you spotted up, Chris. So it's pretty much everybody available, including Oscar, I'm delighted to say, who was given compassionate leave, but is a father and back in the camp in time for the World Cup. The visitors, Serbia, they couldn't quite match Belgium and Croatia in a tough World Cup qualifying group. Their temporary coach, Ljubo Drulovic, has made 3 changes after their recent draw with Panama. Among the players starting tonight, number 16, Milos Jojic, the man signed mid-season by Borussia Dortmund, who made such an impact. One of the brightest young talents to emerge from a part of the world which has never been short of talent. And several of the other names, of course, Premier League regulars, established stars, including Ivanović and Kolarov. So it should be more of a test tonight for Brazil. All fit and correct, we understand, on their substitutes bench as well. And in this run of warm-up games, all bar Bernard have had some first-team action. And in keeping with the other games around the country, I should point out the PR offensive to get the whole nation behind them. Paulista stars from previous Brazil winning sides have been paraded around the pitch here tonight in this, the Estádio Morumbi, to give it its abbreviated name. It is the home of São Paulo FC, some 72 kilometres from Santos, Neymar's former club. That's one local point of reference, but not the São Paulo Stadium, which will be used next week when Brazil kick off the tournament. It will be in the new Corinthians Stadium that they start the great tournament, but they are staying in this part of the country between now and the official beginning of the 2014 World Cup. So, preparations on the field deemed satisfactory so far by this country of 200 million, most of whom are experts, self-appointed experts, of course, self-appointed national coaches. Just 6 short days remain now, and even though there may be doubts about some of the stadia and concerns over just about every aspect of the organisation, all big Phil Scolari and his players have to do is to demonstrate they are ready, and a good job they've been doing in that respect. The final warm-up game brought to you on BT Sport 3 days ago, a 4-0 dismissal of Panama. This might be a more rigorous test tonight. Great pleasure to have David James alongside me. David, today France have lost Franck Ribéry in the final moments, essentially, before the tournament gets underway. Does that play on the minds of players, the fact that, you know, an injury now, David, and all the work is for nothing?
Absolutely. I mean, you want to play the games, you want to represent your country, and you want to make sure that you're at your best going into the tournament, but at the same time you have to have in the back of your mind that slight reservation that you don't want to get injured. You play in games like this, you look at Oxlade-Chamberlain playing for England the other night, an innocuous challenge ends up with him being injured and probably not going to feature in any of the group stages for England. So you want to see your players 100%, which is what you expect when you put that shirt on. But at the same time, you don't want to get anyone injured and be out at the start of this World Cup.
Scolari continues to set the agenda in the run-up to the tournament, keeping all the heat where possible off his players. That clever fashion he has of doing that. Today's soundbite in Brazil, he says it will be Brazil-Argentina in the final in the Maracanã. If both win their groups, that is, they cannot meet until the final. Nobody dared suggest he was getting slightly ahead of himself. So Paulinho returning to the side tonight. Neymar has begun to sparkle, getting fitter and fitter by the day, he says. Fred, a fixture in this side. As Scolari has gone with the men he trusts in time-honoured fashion. And the man in charge, I should just point out, Enrique Cáceres, who made one of the quicker blasts on the whistle we've seen in recent games, David. And it was Neymar on the end of it.
Indeed, I hope this is just a bit of acting on Neymar's behalf. It doesn't look that much of a serious challenge, although there's a bit of a twist in the ankle, and as we were just saying literally 2 minutes ago, you don't want your players to be injured in a pre-tournament friendly. But he looks all right. He's probably do a step over now.
Little ball poked forward in the direction of Hulk. There was a lot of fluidity about Brazil going forward the other night. Not that kind of rigid approach that Scolari's critics have taken issue with in recent times. They looked like they were settling into the positions very effectively. And the other great striking feature, David, perhaps to be seen again tonight, was there was plenty of muscle when required, almost as though Scolari was saying to everybody watching, one thing is, we will not be bullied at home.
Absolutely, and the man on just had the ball there, David Luiz. I mean, there was times in the last match where you would think he might have got sent off. He was that physical in his approach to the game. The one thing I'm really interested in this game is the actual pitch itself, because as you can see, it looks like it's already cut up slightly. We talk about injury fears. I mean, the conditions last match against Panama, it was so bobbly, but the Brazilian side played so well. I mean, we can see there on the screen the grass is already cutting up, and there would have to be a slight concern for the manager.
Free kick was won by Dusan Tadic for Serbia. Thiago Silva back in the side and wearing the captain's armband, of course. Oscar, as I mentioned, the proud father of a new daughter. What a lift just before the tournament.
Well, it looks like the white lines have paid their way.
Well, they'll get washed off even quicker than normal, I should think, with the rain. And that's a very well-weighted cross, and it was Thiago Silva who got his head to it eventually. Or maybe Luiz, in fact.
Good bit of defending there by David Luiz, again showing his physicality.
Serbia looking full of purpose early on. Now Tadic, the young man who made such an impact when signed from Partizan for Borussia Dortmund. Time to get his head up for the second ball in.
I'm not sure if you just saw David Luiz there actually kicking out of the centre forward. You can see they're having words. That was while the ball was being crossed in. Yeah, there looks like there seems to be something going on between the two of them. A continuation again of David Luiz's, if you like, aggression, be it controlled aggression, whatever, but definitely up for the fight, that's for sure.
Chelsea fans will recognise the irony there. Matic against Luiz, and Matic well capable of being a force in the air in the opposition penalty area. Off the chest of Hulk. Marcelo wanted to go forward with it quickly. Neymar. Stopped by Mitrovic. They made a change, incidentally, Serbia up front. David, you referred to it in the build-up to the game tonight on BT Sport. They've been struggling to score goals, and they've actually left Đorđević, the Nantes striker, out of the starting lineup tonight.
Yeah, and the squad, I mean, is the top scorer with 9 goals. I mean, as it stands on the pitch, the highest goal scorer for Serbia is Ivanović, surprisingly. Granted, he's played 50-odd caps, but it's still looking short of goals in this team. Forgive me, 69 caps.
Not quite able to match Belgium and Croatia in their World Cup qualifying group. Serbia. Critical defeat was by Croatia. They were always playing catch-up after that. They drew the return game with Croatia, but they really needed to win it. They fell 3 points short of the playoffs. Neymar got turned and Basta backed away from him. Waited for a little bit of help to arrive. Referee happy to play the advantage.
I think this will be a good test for Brazil. I mean, we're not expecting Serbia to, again, as we've just spoke about, the fact that they're not a free-scoring team. You wouldn't expect, or you would expect, sorry, Serbia to be defending a lot, which is arguably what Brazil will be facing for at least the group stages of the World Cup final. So this will be a good test for Brazil to actually break a side down.
Neymar over it. Scored from a free kick in midweek. This is a little bit further out. Basta got a firm head to it, but he went across the box and needed to be hooked clear by Kolarov. Prodded forward second time by Petrović.
Again, an example of the confidence that Brazil have got. David Luiz just strolling back to his position after the ball had broken down. There was no urgency in there. As I say, I don't think for any given reason they expect Serbia to be much of an offensive threat tonight.
Rolled out to Marcelo. It's delightful by Neymar. Left Basta trailing in his wake. Door was closed eventually by Tošić. Carried forward by Matic. Provocative little flick, you might call that, on Mitrovic.
There's nothing in that at all, was there? It's a bit of diving again. Something hopefully we don't see too much of in the World Cup.
If we do see it, David, I think the referees will have a very different approach than in this game. If previous tournaments are anything to go by, they'll attempt to apply a hardline policy from the off in the attempt to improve the spectacle for everybody. Dusan Tadic takes the free kick, wasn't well struck.
Here we go, have a look at Hulk. It's interesting in the free kick that Brazil had earlier, Hulk actually was 10-15 yards outside the box, and you'd think that he'd be in there trying to get in the mix, but perhaps looking for knockdowns. He's a very powerful player, powerful striker. There is a nice balance this Brazil side, even though I don't think they'll win the World Cup.
Easy to say at this distance, David.
Absolutely.
Wait till you get on the plane.
I've got to say again, another nudge there by David Luiz, and with Brazil being a host nation and the expectation on their shoulders, this one defeat in 51 competitive home games, there's got to be a lot of edge there.
Marcelo, very well forward. Not really the angle on the cross he was looking for. It's an easy take for Stojković. Well-travelled Serbia goalkeeper Stojković. The brief spell at Wigan a few years back, of course, Sporting, and one of those to return to Serbia, playing out his days perhaps at Partizan. The other big talking point in Serbia football circles today, apart from the fact they're playing Brazil, the news handed down from UEFA that the current champions Red Star are to be banned for next season from the Champions League. They've fallen foul of the financial fair play ruling. They have a few days to appeal, but it looks like UEFA are intent on throwing the book at them. Here's Petrović. Kolarov well forward, steered it past Dani Alves well. Eventually got it onto the right. And to the right of Júlio César's right upright, but not by that much, David.
That's great play by Kolarov there. Dani Alves treading water a little bit there. And again, I mean, if Brazil set out the game not expecting Serbia to be much offensively, then half asleep there. You can see Marcelo. The communication's not the best at the moment. I mean, it's interesting about Serbia, having played against Red Star last season in the qualifier for the Europa League. There's only a couple of players in this squad actually playing football in Serbia, and one of the problems that country has, that they don't actually have enough money to support the stars, and then they go further afield.
Young man Markovic, who got on the ball briefly there, might be the next example you were going to name, actually. He went to Benfica, didn't he, from Partizan, the 20-year-old, highly rated. But they, despite everything that's happened in their part of the world over the last 30-odd years, one thing has stayed the same, and that is their ability to find and develop young players who can make it at the top level.
Didn't see what happened there. Some sort of clash.
Basta got one, took one, and perhaps echoing the theme of the night, the theme demonstrated by Brazil in their previous warm-up games. They are not prepared to be pushed around by anybody during this World Cup. From 1 to 11, that's a classic Scolari policy, isn't it? One in, all in. We're going to stand, and if we can't play them off the field, we're not going to be pushed off the field either.
Yeah, he's got a good ethos going on there, but again, we sort of go back to this Brazilian side and what they have to expected to achieve, shall I say, on home soil. They haven't won the World Cup since 2002. It's 12 years. That's a long time for arguably the best national team in history. And the expectation, say, coming to home soil is that they've got to win this tournament.
Well, that's mainly because the echoes are still felt from the only previous occasion that they did host the tournament back in 1950 when they made it to the final. In fact, it was the last group game, but it effectively became a final against Uruguay. The whole world expected that Brazil would see it through and claim the trophy on home soil. It would have been their first win. The fact they did not win, in the event they only needed a draw to become world champions, but they were beaten infamously from their point of view, historically from Uruguay's point of view, and the country's never got over it, frankly. Maybe if they win this one at home, it might assuage the pain at last.
It's an interesting build-up with 11 minutes gone in the game. Brazil are finding it very hard to break Serbia down, and the game against Panama at this stage of the game, I think they were already 1-0 up and looking like they were going to easily cruise the game.
Different test tonight, you're quite right, for Scolari and his men. I think he was expecting a much more searching test.
Saying that, he'll probably go and score a header now. I mean, this is another important thing for the preparation for the World Cup proper, as Don was talking about in the show before, a chance to practice free kicks.
Swung out to the 6-yard line, and man marking, man for man, Serbia standing up to the test pretty well then. Worked out to Jojic. Nicely done by Petrovic, who's been brought into the side tonight by Ljubo Drulovic. Just really to sit in front of the back players as a kind of extra insurance policy, but they know how to break well also. They've demonstrated that. Konov was run off it. But Serbia in Brazil's face wherever possible.
Sensing a bit of frustration from Neymar. Just there near the halfway line. Wanting the ball, receiving it now, granted.
Luiz Gustavo. Paulinho. Ramirez, incidentally, the player to make way, so that's not one of the Chelsea contingent out of the reckoning for tonight. He is on the bench, as you saw. Picked up in space. Basta looking to get forward. Paulinho doing the stopping. Here's another one of those early wrestling matches you mentioned, David. Luiz again involved, heavily involved.
Yeah, he seems to be involved in pretty much every wrestling match so far in this game. He's a very aggressive stance, and it's a continuation from the game against Panama.
Basta crowded out of it again.
It was interesting watching the early exchanges in that Panama game. As I say, I was quite surprised by how good they were technically on the ball. They were a lot better than what I've seen so far with Serbia. Although Brazil did take their dominance quite early on. It's a different view here. And as I say, for Brazil going into the tournament proper, they're going to come up against sides like this who aren't necessarily going to be that offensive. They're going to want to not get beat. England had this in World Cup 2010 when they played against the likes of Algeria, a side which everyone expected to be easily dispatched, ending up with a 0-0 draw because Algeria didn't want to get beat. They didn't intend to win the game, just didn't want to get beat.
Of course, the oddest thing tonight is that if Serbia do get a positive outcome in this game, they'll have done Croatia a big favour, because it is Croatia who Brazil meet first, and what Scolari wants, Scolari gets, and that's a bit spiteful as well, isn't it, by Petrovic. Friendly or not, that is a yellow. It's not a very friendly so far tonight, though, is it?
It's not at all. That is... I'm sure some referees might even consider that a sending off offence, actually deliberately striking a player. But again, perhaps in some senses for Brazil, when they've got such aggressive opponents, they're going to have to get used to this.
Neymar wanted to get on it himself and play back in kind then, really. Brazil in the retreat here, and if that ball had been better, they might have been exposed, because there was a little bit of a miscommunication, it did appear, between David Luiz and Marcelo. Marcelo was stopping and Luiz was going backwards.
And this is what I was trying to say to Don before the game, that the Brazilian side, again, another national side that's so fragmented, players all around the world, they don't have this cohesiveness, they don't have this regularity with each other, and therefore the breakdown in communications are going to occur. It stands to reason that they'll get better as the games go on, but their next match is the first proper game in the World Cup finals, and if they haven't got it sorted out by then they could be in trouble. I mean, this Serbian side aren't the best.
I think on form you'd have to say that Croatia are a notch above them on everything they've achieved over the last few years. The obvious likeness, the reason Scolari went for Serbia, hand-picked opposition for this final warm-up game. Oscar gets into space. Been quiet so far. Overran that.
It's a nice little bit of play, and you'd think that if a better touch there, then there's a great opportunity to score a goal. I sort of go back to the fact these friendlies before the tournament, you know, you've got a bit in reserve. You have to, and sometimes the tempo might not be exactly right. You wouldn't expect Brazil to play against Croatia like this. But you can see with a couple of passes how they can just open sides up, and that's what makes them formidable.
Nonetheless, all our Brazilian TV colleagues, David, are telling us, barring injury or barring some catastrophic loss of form, this is the 11 that Scolari wants to start the tournament with.
I'm surprised. I think from a lot of quarters, Paulinho hasn't had the greatest of seasons this year, and if he's in the starting 11, then obviously Scolari sees something that others don't. And let's be right, he's the manager of Brazil, and if he knows the right formula and wins the World Cup because of it, then who are we to argue?
Holtz pulled back, Neymar got it on the side, but he was crowded again, and this time Basta got clear of him and then gave it away. A present made of it to Neymar is a fabulous covering challenge by Petrovic, who has made an impact, brought into the side tonight by Drulovic, just stopping out the little gaps in front of the back four.
Again, a little breakdown, a bit of a mistake, and then Neymar's in. I think that's Ivanović who's got across to make the block. Typical Ivanović, isn't it? 100% committed for him. This is, I'm not going to say it's a World Cup match, of course, because there's nothing like it, but to be beaten by Brazil was something that he would for sure not want to happen.
Ivanović got his head to that one too. Tošić got on it, squeezed it past Marcelo, but gave it away. Paulinho, little uninventive there. It's playing like a little bit of a pudding of a pitch, this, after that torrential rainstorm, but again, you've got to get used to it. It's part of the deal out here.
That's the thing. I'm not sure what pitches they're going to be using for the actual finals. As silly as that might sound, they're used to the sort of the Durso pitches here in England, which has a third artificial grass. The matches I've seen Brazil play in the pre-tournament games like this one, as you can see, the pitches cut up terribly. Now, if the pitches in the final itself are going to be like this, then a lot of clubs are going to suffer. A lot of countries are going to suffer. England being one of them, because we're so used to playing on such good pitches.
I think we should also ask you to keep a very close eye on the ball, which of course is normally of great interest to the goalkeeping fraternity, but this is the ball they're going to use in the tournament.
Absolutely. I've been told that this is the roundest football ever.
The roundest?
Every tournament had produced the roundest football ever. So I've been told.
I'm missing something, obviously.
The marketing team have done very well to produce such a round ball.
Well, it rolled nicely for Paulinho anyway. Here come Brazil, if Hulk can get it, which he does, and he can't keep his feet. Almost tricked his way past second time.
But that has to warrant a yellow card. I know it's not going to affect the tournament proper, but it's a bit of a spiteful match, this. I mean, on two fronts, the petulance being shown by the players must be a worry for Scolari. The conditions, as we saw there, Hulk falling over, have got to be a worry for Scolari through injuries. But these games have to be played. As I say, this Brazilian side, they are not that familiar with each other, given they're all playing for so many different sides.
What they are familiar with is winning games, and they've won 14 of the last 15. So to drop one just before the tournament would certainly be unnerving.
Well, that record is quite exceptional. One defeat in 51 years in competitive matches on home soil. But they wish they'd had the World Cup a few more times.
Mitrovic has got the temerity to stand toe-to-toe with David Luiz here. Enrique Cáceres is having his patience tested, the man from Paraguay, who's in charge tonight. Well, we hope he's in charge. It's threatening to get out of hand completely.
I'm amazed at what I'm seeing here. As I say, David Luiz, this is, what's that, third, fourth time? As I say, there was the cross came in which wasn't picked up by anybody. Officials, that is, where he's actually kicking out at the centre forward. And again, I'd be worried if I'm a manager, Scolari, I'd be worried that is David Luiz going to be able to control his temperament when the real games come around.
As you alluded to, however, David, earlier, no team of Scolari's is ever less than on the front foot and willing to engage in the scrap if that's what it has to be. His ideal, the mixture of silk and steel. Luis Gustavo's been quiet, but when he gets started, I could tell you, having seen him plenty in the Bundesliga this season, he's a fiery one as well. Logic on Cello.
The way this game's going, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone getting sent off, I have to say.
Do you think it's also a case tonight of the message that goes from this place, David, on the eve of the tournament, that all the other rival countries will be watching how Serbia try to get at Brazil tonight and learning from that? And I think Scolari has alluded to this. He's basically told the world, all you're going to learn is that we are not taking a backward step. If we have to fight it out with teams, we're going to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. The expectation is that you're going to play a Serbian side, as we've said, who can't score a goal, so let Brazil go and win 4 or 5-0. A bit of showboating before the tournament starts. But on the contrary, I'm curious to know what the brief was in the Serbian dressing room. Whether or not they were said, let's get stuck into them, you know, let's not be embarrassed by this Brazil side who think we're here to be the whipping boys. It's a good test and a good signal that we're sending out to the rest of the world, especially when David Luiz, I say, there would be a concern as a manager that you wouldn't want him doing this and getting sent off, but because he's up for this friendly the way that he is, what's it going to be like his commitment towards the actual group matches?
What is in it, of course, for Serbia, as with any international that's got a profile like this, are a few FIFA ranking points, and they've been trying quite successfully to increase their ranking status over the last year. They've put a decent little run together themselves, Serbia, unbeaten in 7 since last August, when they lost to Colombia in a friendly. The results have picked up either side of the departure of Sinisa Mihajlović, who, as you know, went to Sampdoria in November.
I think on top of that, on a personal level, for a player to actually play against Brazil, to actually you want to beat Brazil, it's the sort of thing that you'll be telling your grandchildren. And there's, I'm sure, quite a few English players who played against Brazil, beat them at Wembley many moons ago. I wasn't playing, so I've forgotten which one it was, but the point being is to actually play. I never played against Brazil as a player, and it's one of those things that you just wish that one day you could have actually played against them.
Well, England beat them not long back, of course, number 1, and number 2, we all know John Barnes's.
What a goal that was. Exactly.
Created an industry around one goal in a friendly. One incredible goal, admittedly, but it was against Brazil.
Absolutely. And nice tight pair of shorts as well for all those short fans out there.
They break the first line of defence, Brazil. It's shot from distance, and it's never troubling Stojković, but it is a shot by Fred, who's hardly been in the game through the first 25 minutes tonight. And they've hardly threatened, really, Brazil.
It's interesting seeing that ball move, and I'd like to say maybe it's because it's so round that it isn't travelling as true as you would like, but having watched a few of the goal kicks, the goalkeeper seemed to be topping the ball and it's dipping very early. I think it's more the conditions than it is the ball itself. But like you say, I mean, it's a long-range shot. Brazil haven't been able to really cut through Serbia so far. They've been very organised. As you say that name, I guess it's a chance.
But again, the cover's there from Ivanović, using all that experience. So doughty a competitor is he, relishing it tonight. Not much when it goes forward like that for Serbia. Let's see what they've got on the deck. Very nicely. Kolarov looks in the mood to go out on a high.
Yeah, again, thinking about what Serbia's brief would have been in this game, just to disrupt Brazil as much as they can. And I think they've done a very good job so far.
Yes, they have. Pitch didn't help there. Decision by the officials is whether it's a corner or not. I think it will be. It
was interesting hearing that Scolari wasn't happy with the Panama game, even though it was a 4-0 result. And I say at the beginning of the game, Panama were playing the ball around quite freely. Brazil actually didn't look like they were fully up to it right at the beginning of the game. I say once they score the goal, they're in command there, but in Serbia here, we're just physically putting it up against Brazil.
Julio César got some distance on it. I defer to the expert on that.
It's the truth, he's got to catch it. I mean, again, if you're a Croatian manager, you're watching this, you'll be saying, well, just put the crosses in on the goalkeeper, pick up second pieces. He's not going to catch it. Granted, it could be wet, the conditions could be slightly against him, but a goalkeeper of his standing, you would expect him to catch a corner swung in like that.
Delivered long from Stojković. One in the air by David Luiz. Shock horror, I think we've had 2 minutes without a free kick in this game.
Brazil leave that middle of the pitch so open there. I mean, Markovic there was free, he had his arm up waiting for the ball. And so no one was playing the ball into him from the Serbian side. But again, if you're going to analyse the way that Brazil play, there's such a freedom to their shape almost that better teams would be able to utilise the opportunities given to them in those spaces.
They are struggling to get their rhythm tonight, though, aren't they? They've been knocked out of it by Serbia. Drulovic's plan working nicely. We understand he is still the interim Serbia manager. But if he's not going to get the job when he gets it, if he does get a good result against Brazil, he's got no chance, really. As a statement, this has plenty to offer so far tonight. They've got a Euro 2016 campaign to start in the new season. They're involved with Armenia first up, away from home in October. Don't play a competitive game in September. The other teams in the group, Albania, Denmark and Portugal, who are obviously starting as top seeds, but performances like this by Serbia might even be tailor-made for games against Portugal.
This is a very good point. With Portugal's, obviously with Ronaldo and their attacking threat, Serbia would have to, you would imagine, set up pretty similar to this, quite defensive. I mean, what's interesting is they're not putting too much pressure on the Brazilian side, forcing Brazil to have to make the decision. It's a lot easier. I mean, I was playing five-a-side yesterday. You run it personally, passes past you, and you're out the game.
Played forward by Basta. It was a reach by Luis Gustavo. Jojic, Marcelo to him, but wasn't sure the pass ahead of him. Tadic got closed out, needed to use the ball a little bit more quickly than Dusan Tadic. Neymar bundled off it, heading back toward his own goal. That's the cameo story of this whole first half. Neymar unable to pick up where he left off the other night.
As you say, we're approaching half an hour into this game, a third of the way through, and I can't remember a goalkeeper making any save of note.
Ivanović was on his toes when he needed to be, but it's been picked up by Hulk. Dani Alves. Nobody told him he was being crowded out of it.
But again, there was a situation there where the midfield player has stood off Dani Alves, not committed himself.
Serbia outmanning them here. Brazil in deep bother. Júlio César got down and they almost conspired between them, the goalkeeper and David Luiz, to knock it in on the rebound. That's a let-off. Swift counter-attack started by Marković, who ran with it really well, created the space, and Kolarov drove it in there, and it almost got underneath the goalkeeper, David.
Yeah, full credit to David Luiz. He's held that front post position so often this season. I've talked about centre-halves who have come either too far forward or too far behind. He holds that position. It forces the guy to shoot or try and score rather than leaving a space for someone to run across. I think it was Kolarov there who had the shot, but full marks to David Luiz.
Let's see how Brazil defend the corner. Unease in this crowd tonight in the Morumbi. Great unease. Seemed to be an arm in the air. Matic, eventually the referee stops it. I wonder if he got a word from the top. And there was that bizarre incident in the closing stages of the game against Panama the other night when the referee at the time seemed to send the man off, and then thought better of it, and they just went on with the game.
And then had a free kick on the edge of the box from a corner, which was very bizarre. Maybe, and again, strange considering that a sending off wouldn't have affected anybody with regards to missing follow-up games. But I thought it was definitely sending off. It was handball and nothing else.
They were 4-0 up at the time. Hulk. Nothing doing. Doggedly won back by Serbia. Fine challenge by Oscar, but not a good ball.
I've got to say, we're going to blame the pitch for this performance so far. The passing isn't fluid. It looks very heavy and very difficult to make the pass. I mean, that was a very, very stray pass, but even the running movements look difficult in this condition.
Thiago Silva took charge of it. Actually made a present of it to Matic, who got on it, showed a real touch of class then, Matic. And so too Serbia here threatening. Should have been 1-0. Their inability to convert chances that they've created has followed them into this game tonight. That really is a sitter for Mitrovic, and he's not even hit the target.
He's got a free header. It's at a great height for him. That's, as you say, that's got to hit the target. He's got to force César into a save at least. And you know, the two best chances arguably have come to Serbia so far.
No question, but that is a player who has failed to find the net for Real Valladolid this season in La Liga in Spain.
I mean, it's interesting, again, going back to the comments about Scolari saying that it would be a Brazil-Argentina final. Straight away, he's put so much pressure on his players. You know, the expectation was already great from the Brazilian fans, and you know, for myself, I'm brought up in the heyday of Brazilian football, if you like, and it would be wonderful for them to win the tournament. Of course, you want England to win, but massive pressure.
Hulk did well. Crowd lifted by that. Neymar. No need to comment really on that effort by Dani Alves. Just a reminder about the other attractions as the final days are counted down to the World Cup. Australia against Croatia coming up later. And tomorrow, United States against Nigeria. Still on Sunday, France against Jamaica. No Franck Ribéry, the headline, I'm afraid, for France today. Luis Gustavo knew where the space was, showed a bit of class then. A lot of it's been played in Brazil's half of the field, though. Marcelo.
Yeah, I keep seeing players slipping over on a regular basis at the moment, and You just wonder whether the first goal is going to come through someone's mistake rather than a tremendous bit of skill.
He's backing himself time and again, the right-back Basta, trying to weave away past one or two challengers. I don't think he's got past the first one very often. Has won a free kick this time. Stalwart for Udinese in Serie A for the last few years. Basta. Steady Eddie in other man's language, perhaps.
Steady Eddie.
I don't know what the Italian for Steady Eddie is, sorry.
I'm sure I can phone up Richard Hughes and he'll tell me.
Fell for Kolarov. Marković, who looks a major talent, Lazar Marković. Also, Matic in flashes in his first half. That's sensational. And at full pace, Thiago Silva had to get there. But I did say at the top tonight, David, that there are one or two quality players for Serbia in this lineup tonight, and they've shown flashes of it, haven't they? Yeah,
I've been very impressed, as I say. They've had the best chances in the game. They've nullified pretty much everything that Brazil have offered. I say the conditions have a lot to play in that, I think, because the passing hasn't been as crisp from either side as they would like. But any Serbian fans out there will be pleased with what they've seen with coming up to 36 minutes into the game, and if anything, they should be the side that's ahead.
Ivanović thought better than to give it to Basta this time. Closing it up to Marković, who got it down to Matic.
I'm looking at Paulinho. He seems to be just running around in that space. The ball's fallen to him rather than him being in a position to sort of control that midfield. And I say a better side than Serbia are going to be able to pop the ball around Brazil, and you're going to find out how good Brazil's defensive capabilities are. I mean, Panama didn't offer much. César's only save was made because of a slip rather than the difficulty of the save or the shot.
Hulk went backwards. Marcelo wanted to try to work a little combination with him. I think he followed in his own pass quite quickly. And in fact, look at Marcelo. He's still having a go at Hulk. Bottom of screen. Aimed at Fred. He was second. Petrovic calmness itself. He's picked up a lot in front of that back four for Serbia in this first half. Marković.
So what, credit to Serbia, as I say, the conditions look so difficult and they're trying to pass it. Well, they've passed the ball around the back.
Taken off the toe of Thiago Silva. Neymar doing his best to act the enforcer here. We know it's not his forte, but he stopped Serbia. I think he'd claimed that at least. It was Petrovic trying to carry it forward.
I don't think for 1 minute Brazil were expecting Serbia to be playing as well as they have done, with coming up to 38 minutes into the game. Let's be right, this is a Serbia side who haven't qualified, so it's not as if we're expecting them to beat Brazil. But as I say, for the last warm-up game for the tournament, you would expect Brazil to be, if anything, 2 or 3 goals up by now.
In an ideal world, would you identify, with every respect to any individual loyalties, would you identify a straightforward opponent that you know you're going to beat 2 or 3 without playing well, just to get a result? Would you do that, or would you look for a test like Brazil have ended up having here?
I think, regardless of this result, you want, obviously, Scolari wants his side to win. I think there's a matter of just getting games out of the way. The first game against Croatia is going to be the key game. That's the one, as Don said before the show. You know, that first game in the actual finals itself proper, that's the one you're playing for. These, in some instances, get in the way because everyone's hyped up about the actual tournament, unless, of course, you haven't got a starting 11 sorted out, and you need to find out where you're going to be involved, if you're going to play or not, and as a manager, what side you're going to put out. But winning 6-0 or ending up on a defeat shouldn't really make any difference in the pre-tournament matches.
Luiz Gustavo, not a lot on in front of him. Back out to David Luiz.
Serbia looks so well organised defensively.
This is a side that drew with Panama a few days ago, incidentally. We know it's, I think it's fair comment to say, part of the DNA in their part of the footballing world is to be a bit hit or miss, but they're a hit tonight. They're on it tonight. inconsistently has certainly dogged their progress over the last decade or so. They've had one or two very promising sides going into tournaments, and it's come apart more than once. World Cup 2010 under Radiantic, they lost against Ghana.
And there is a perfect demonstration of their defensive woes, if you like, Brazilian, as much as...
Jojic.
A better side scores or at least gets a shot on target. Again, it's difficult to gauge because this is a pre-tournament friendly, not a competitive game.
Neymar. Bit more promising here for Brazil. Mown down again. This time by Matic. A similar foul to that got a card earlier in this game. That was for Petrovic, of course. If there's any logic at all, surely Matic gets a card there.
Yeah, cynical foul. For once, Neymar getting a bit of space to run into. The stage is there. You see how bobbly the pitch is, and Neymar gliding along. I mean, he's a wonderful player to watch.
Kolarov's intervention was for nothing. It is a card. His best moment, but he's been eye-catching in possession tonight, Nemanja Matic. Just might have saved go first time at Chelsea. Right, the white line drawn. These 10. Or even less when it's been pouring with the rain like this. But it is. To our Brazilian TV comment, got about 10.5 here, Brazil. Luiz. What we're going to do now? Blame the ball.
Well, maybe if he'd have taken that free kick 20 yards further away. It was not the best David Luiz free kick I've seen this season.
Hope he keeps his cool tonight. A bit of form with Serbia, actually. When he was Portuguese national side, of course, where 2002 World Cup win there. Major tournaments, as you're aware, David. You may not remember, you may have been playing at the time. 8 when Serbia met. Scolari was in charge of Portugal, and the first draw resulted in a left hook. Ivanović. End of the game.
I don't. 2000. Not mistaken, England weren't involved, so I was...
That's wiped from your memory, okay.
Yeah, I was probably on holiday somewhere.
It certainly wasn't Scolari's finest moment.
It's interesting, since 2000, the Brazilian league has actually changed its structure. Reading the league sort of goes through until October, November. Whereas before it used to start after the World Cup in August, going through to December. So they had a lot of free time preparing, the Brazilian race, preparing for the tournament. Which even now, the 4 players that have come from Brazil, domestic games or league games leading into the tournament. So the side would have been so much fresher. Whereas we've got, especially the English, the main bodies in Europe.
The point, Oscar basically has played 2 full break of any kind. Some would say he's showing signs of it, actually, and Chelsea fans might argue that as well. The second half of the last domestic.
I think it's a big contributing factor, and again this goes back to my theory that you need a lot more home-based players, especially Brazil in the 2002 squad, as I've said before, and that 30, that's over half the squad number.
Luiz and Thiago Silva getting in a horrible tangle. This might be the moment. They do get in the net. To judge, David, how fine a decision this is, it looks like the
side, but once again we have who aren't familiar with each other. This consistency that you have week in, week out, even playing in the same sport, you're what they're doing.
That's next season's Paris Saint-Germain centre-back pairing, of course, isn't it?
Now they're sort of getting familiar with each other now.
Mistake by Júlio César. Toward his line, in fact, he's been spared the blushes, Luiz Gustavo.
In Júlio César's defence, again, I think you're going to blame the pitch for this. You can see he's kicked the turf before he's kicked the ball. For the observer, the casual observer, you might think that properly, but there's been so many players so far in this game doing the same thing, and I think the conditions, the pitch must be so squodgy. Planting foot is a little bit lower than it normally is, so the strike is going to go through the ground. It looks different.
Just to repeat, they are staying in São Paulo, Brazil, but the opener against Croatia in Group A, opening the tournament, will be at the other big new stadium in this part of the world, the new Corinthians Stadium.
I think hats off so far. Controlled performance. It's been well organised. I think they've done themselves credit so far, because this Brazil side, having watched the Panama game the other day, as I say, conditions aside, were quite electric.
Quite a contrast tonight. Easily dealt with by Tošić. And that's where we draw a... The whistles and the boos tell the story for us. We don't need to add much. Brazil have been anything Brazilian in their cutting edge, their lack of impact tonight. Quite worrying for the massed hordes in the yellow. This has not been anything like the Fiesta. Serbia, a much tougher nut to crack. And Serbia are giving a very good account of themselves, as Brazil have struggled to create anything of consequence in this first half. It's 0, Serbia 0 at half-time.
Now, the second half of Brazil against Serbia coming right up. But don't forget that following us tonight at 10 o'clock on BT Sport 1 is The Football's On. Ian Stone will be joined by Doc Brown and comedian Andy Parsons for a humorous look at the week's football stories. That's Football's On, 10 o'clock on BT Sport 1. Now, we're waiting with bated breath to see if there have been any changes in Sao Paulo. Will Philip Scolari make any big changes? I think we can almost sense and hear him shouting from... because he wouldn't have been happy with that.
No, he would not have been happy. As I said, I think they've been guilty of giving the ball away, and that's very unlike Brazil, because that's how they've been done. They've been done on the counter-attack, and that's why the full-backs Marcelo and Dani Alves have been bombing on, because they're expecting 3 or 4 passes later they will get in. But in the centre of the park, Brazil
I hope he's not playing in midfield, this lad. He's got skinny legs.
Got good vision, though.
Yeah, very good, Don. Love it. Yes, it has been very strange that they haven't been able to keep hold of the ball, because that is what Brazil are all about.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, Serbia have got in and amongst them, to be fair, as we saw on some of the pitches there. They are getting stuck in and have stopped them playing, but these are problems that they'll come up against in the tournament.
Yeah.
You know, the Croatians are going to get in and amongst them. Mexico and Cameroon, they're not going to let them play. Yeah. So they've got to find a way of turning it on for the fans. The fans want to leave this stadium happy. They want to see a good performance, a good result. And at the moment, they're not seeing that.
Yeah. Who are the players, do you think, that he could use, do you think? You know, we've talked about the people in midfield. Paulinho has disappointed you. Yeah. What sort of players do you think he could introduce, or we're likely to see later on in the tournament will be their mainstays? The Dungas, the boys that keep control of it.
Well, this sort of fixture, for instance, you might see the likes of Willian, you might see the people like Ramirez. I mean, Oscar's playing tonight, but he's been a shadow of himself, so sometimes you might have to go with a little bit more steel. You might see David Luiz playing in the centre of midfield to try and get on the ball, Dante coming in at centre-half, but in all honesty, this team should be winning anyway. It's too good of a side. I'm making excuses for them, because that starting 11 should be good enough to get a win tonight. Yeah, well, that replay was just obviously Neymar getting a bit of treatment after 4 seconds. You've got your wish. Willian is on. I think it's Oscar that might have come off. We're just waiting for the number to come up. No surprise Willian's coming on. I think they needed that. Needed a bit of legs. Someone that can get on the ball and as I said, got good legs, can go box to box. They've not had any midfield players that have joined the frontmen, so maybe that's Phil's team talk at half-time.
OK, John, thank you very much indeed. It's back to David James and, first of all, Paul Dempsey.
Thank you again, Chris and Don. And to wrap up the story of Oscar's week, I don't think it's that surprising. New dad and all that. Needs to get some sleep in before the tournament starts. Willian knocking hard on the door for an automatic pick. May see this as his last big chance.
Serbia look reluctant to take the kickoff.
Keeping Brazil waiting again, frustrating them, as they have done all through the night so far here. It's hardly been the ideal send-off for a World Cup campaign on home soil so far. Brazil frustrated largely by a very solid-looking Serbia side with one or two touches of class. 45 minutes to change the mood.
Neymar losing his footing again. He stayed down as well, but fortunately he's got up.
Sportingly put out of play so he can put himself back together again. I think he's shaking himself up here.
So the thing is, a little slip like that can be enough just to tweak a muscle.
Well, Chris mentioned at half-time the alarm in the Germany camp tonight following that injury to Marco Reus. The problem is, David, time is up, you know, just a few days now.
Yeah, and for many different reasons, you have to play these games. As I say, it can get in the way in some respects, and obviously if players get injured, then there's going to be a question mark over whether they should have been involved in the first place. But you know, the games here, they have to be played.
Well, we're sorry about that. We said that Brazil were very static in midfield, but that was taking the mickey, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're keeping an eye on the Germany game as well. They've just gone 2-1 up.
Yeah.
Podolski scored, but you know, we'll have to wait and see if we can get them pictures back.
We will try and get those pictures back, of course, as soon as we can, because we're really looking forward to seeing whether Brazil are the finished article. We might as well talk about Germany. Hopefully we'll get you the goals against Armenia. The big news has been this evening that Marco Reus has twisted his ankle, and it looked pretty bad. He went off in tears. He's been to hospital. And it's moments like that that can not only obviously end an individual's World Cup, but it could end your team's dreams.
Yeah.
And we've just seen Neymar have a little slip and a little twist of a knee, it looked like. Well, it's very, very dangerous, these games.
Well, how many players, and this is the dilemma managers have got, you know, throwing players in to give them match time, but you are running the risk of getting injuries. And what we've saw Oxlade-Chamberlain out for a week to 3 weeks, that could be the end of his tournament. We've seen Frank Ribery, he's out for the tournament. Now Marco Reus, I would imagine, is going to be out, because that looked a real bad one to me. When them ankle ligaments go like that, that can be a long time. You know, it might not just be weeks, it could be months. We hope not. It might just be a tweak. So these are the dilemmas the managers have got. And as we said at half-time, I would certainly be looking at Neymar and bringing him off. OK, well, let's open this conversation a bit more, because goodness knows how long it's going to be until we get these pictures back. Have you been... I suppose it's quite nice to see Brazil struggling, and it's quite nice to see Germany team maybe not firing all cylinders. That's coming from an Englishman.
That coming as an England fan.
You've seen them get booed up for half-time,
exactly.
and you love it, didn't you?
Oh, they're just as bad as no. It's encouraging that maybe we're not far off.
Yeah, well, you know, it's tournament football. I mean, I haven't had the joy to play in one. The closest I came was when we lost over 2 legs to England, when we lost 2-1 on aggregate. So that was painful, but the likes of David James, he's played in these tournaments, and it's where every footballer wants to be. You want to play in tournament football, and, you know, you're running the risk of getting injuries, as we said, but there's always a chance for someone to come through. Now Oxlade-Chamberlain's out of the England squad. You never know. It might mean Barkley goes in,
yeah,
becomes an absolute superstar. So a little bit of moments like that, a little bit of good fortune like that might help someone. But at the same time, you still want the big players playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Italian 90, you know, Brian Robson or the World Cup before they miss out. And people...
Gaza goes in.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just bring you up to date then with the Germany game, because they have been playing Armenia. Germany struggled in the first half. Royce, unfortunately, went off injured. Podolski came on and immediately made the difference, set up Andre Schürrle. Well-worked goal. Maybe Schürrle's the secret. He did a good job at Chelsea, didn't he, up front?
Good player, good player. You know, one of my favourites over the last 5 or 10 years has been Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Yeah.
I loved watching him. I got to know him well when I went over to Bayern Munich for treatment when I was at West Ham and saw what a good player he is.
Yeah, well, that's Mkhitaryan scoring for Armenia from the penalty spot. No doubt about being a penalty spot. We thought, is there a shock? Are Germany struggling?
Yeah.
And then they've turned it on a bit. Podolski again.
You want him in the box. When I look at Podolski, I think he's such a wasted talent playing out on the left-hand side. He plays there for Arsenal, plays there for Germany. But every time he gets in the box, he always looks a threat to me.
And then Germany just making 3-1. Defender getting up there, which is always good. Yeah, Podolski's he's played on the left for Arsenal a bit, which I think a lot of German fans are saying he's a proven goal scorer. Get him up front. Yeah,
well, for me, it baffles me why he doesn't spend enough time in that position. Maybe because he works hard for the team and plays on the left-hand side for defensive cover. But I think there's 1,000,001 players you'd put on the left-hand side before him, in my opinion. I'd play him through the middle. OK, I've got some good news and bad news. The bad news is Brazil still haven't. But the good news is you can watch the match now. Here's Paul and David.
With our apologies for the lengthy break-up. Brazil looking to get a little jolt of electricity from somewhere in this game, that is for sure. Neymar can't provide it here, but he's got a free kick.
Doesn't look like we've missed too much. Again, Serbia looking so organised at the moment. It's the question that was asked before: what do you want? You know, do you want to win out 6-0 winners and keep the mood in the nation good, or do you actually need a proper test? And so far, I think in every aspect, physicality, organisation, this is a proper test for Brazil up against a very, very well organised Serbian side.
Handpicked by Scolari, remember, with Croatia on the other side of Sao Paulo in the first game of the World Cup finals on Thursday. This was the preparation game for Brazil in the mind of Scolari, facing a side with similar footballing tradition, similar pattern of play. And no doubt all the 200 million experts in Brazil will be picking over it all, David, over the next 48 hours or so.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There'll be people out there, as much as they want Brazil to win the World Cup, they'll be criticising the squad selection, they'll be criticising tactics for this match, even position. As I say, as far as Brazil, the players so far, they'll be saying this has been a good test. They'd want to win the game, of course, but it's been a great test because they just can't go and steamroller every team that comes up against them.
The problem is, we're talking about Brazil. Here's Hulk. Helped on by Paulinho. Neymar wriggled free, but then couldn't find the obvious ball to Dani Alves. Now Brazil have to retreat again, and Marković, who's shown 1 or 2 nice turns of foot, goes again here, having a race with Thiago Silva. Kolarov backing up. Not the best from him. Cut out by Willian. To Hulk again. And that's all too easy for Petrovic to cut that out. Jozic. Won it back, Jozic. Last man was Thiago Silva. Had to do 2 tackles. And he got some help in the end from Marcelo. Bit desperate again for Brazil, though. Marcelo doing his best to try to pretend the house wasn't on fire then.
Absolutely. And once again, if you're a Croatia coach, player, you'd be looking at what Brazil are doing here, knowing that you don't need to be diving in. And it was interesting earlier when Neymar was running across the front of the box. The Croatian players stood up, didn't dive in.
Again, Thiago Silva threw himself into the challenge. An athlete par Fons, the captain. Basta. Not the worst of balls, and had Tadić really gone for that, might have been an opportunity.
I think he knows how good that ball was. Yeah, just a hesitation there, brief hesitation, and that was enough. Probably thought that Silva was going to attempt to try and head it. Froze for a split second.
Some would say that's the difference between a top-line striker and the rest. You know, they always go for it, don't they? They expect things to come their way. Does it come for Brazil here? No.
And again, a great bit of defending by Serbia. They've held the line well. They've seen Neymar making the run through, stepped up on him, and it's offside. I'm actually feeling a little bit for Stojković, the Serbian goalkeeper, who at 0-0 he'd be thinking he'd be buzzing the fact he hasn't conceded a goal, but he hasn't had to make a serious save yet. And he can tell his grandchildren if he gets away with a clean sheet without making a save, he won't refer to the game too much other than the scoreline.
Altogether a better fate than we were talking about the infamous World Cup, the only other one staged in Brazil in 1950, and I'm afraid to say the man who for the rest of his life was made to carry the blame for Brazil, their goalkeeper Barbosa, tormented till his death by that shock defeat by Uruguay. Even turned away, they say, at the 1994 camp when he came to pay his respects to the current group of Brazilian players, and they said that we don't want you, you're bad luck, we don't, you know how superstitious they can be.
Wow, and I thought I got a bit of stick when I made some mistakes for England, but fortunately nothing like that. I even actually got back in the squad. So again, passion, and again the weight of expectations these Brazilian players' shoulders from their supporters. And, you know, do you want this 6-0 win so the supporters feel happy? Scolari obviously wants the real test, as I've said, and he seems to be getting 100% proper test by the Serbian outfit. It's good to see.
Free kick won by the FC20 number 10, Dusan Tadić. Got 16 league goals last season. I might have done him a disservice a moment ago by suggesting he didn't know where the goal was when he went for that cross. Did get 16 in the top flight in Holland. Kolarov, not his best, cut out by Dani Alves. But run down all too easily by the retreating Mitrovic.
That's the second time Alves has been caught that same position where he's had the ball. I think he's expecting to be closed down, and instead he gets pickpocketed from a player coming from behind.
Marcelo now. Leaves it for Neymar. David, are you looking at a group of Brazilian players who've got plenty in hand tonight, who are, to a degree, going through the motions a little bit cautiously?
I'm looking at the conditions, I have to say, and I think it doesn't suit Brazilian style of football. Neymar's had one or two runs, perhaps, at best. And because of that, I don't think they've got anything reserved, because if they did, they would turn it on at least once. And just, again, not necessarily cut through this Serbian side, but just do something to create a chance. As I say, you know, Stojković is standing there about to take a goal kick and hasn't been fully tested in this game at all. I mean, he must be surprised himself.
If anything, the stadium here tonight has actually filled up even more since kick-off. The full capacity is over 73,000. They don't do things by halves in this part of the world. The original plan for the new stadium, where Brazil will play, had a crowd potentially of 200,000.
200,000.
Incredible in the modern era, I know, but obviously it was scaled down at the planning stage. But such would be the interest in watching Brazil play the first game of the World Cup.
Well, Brazil were one half of the world record football attendance, which I believe is 199,000. Perhaps against Uruguay.
Indeed so, yes. Now they're in. And he tucked it out well for a man on the deck, Fred, who's been absolutely anonymous tonight, but he's put Brazil in front out of nothing.
Well, that's absolutely ruined Stojkovic's clean sheet story to his grandchildren, but interestingly, Brazil going pretty route one here. This is a ball into the target man, a mix-up there by Ivanović. Completely lost his bearings.
Don't expect that of Ivanović, but I'm afraid he was at fault there, the Serbia captain. And the Fluminense frontman, here we are in Sao Paulo territory, but it's the Fluminense frontman who spares Brazil's blushes tonight. It's a clever finish on the deck.
How well has he finished that?
Absolutely. And he's got a great overall scoring ratio in international football. That's overlooked all too often. also, all day long, Scolari believes in this man, and the faith repaid again.
Yeah, that's a fantastic finish there. I mean, on the floor. I mean, it's not even off balance. He's on the floor. He's got a great toe on it, and as I say, Stojković has had no chance trying to save that shot.
Almost against the run of play, Brazil lead. Matic caught this time. Perhaps Serbia beginning to flag. It's a corner.
And again, if you're a Croatia player looking at this, looking at a side in Serbia basically controlling the game, it just emphasises how good a side like Brazil are and how they can just turn it around and say one ball in, bit of a mix-up by Ivanović, and then Fred's there knocking it in 1-0.
Hulk's corner. Out as far as Marcelo. Hulk again. Hulk ran away from two then and really cracked that, and might even have caught his own man. Suddenly Serbia looked to have had the energy sapped out of them. Willian. That's brilliant. It's Hulk's onside. And Stojković, the goalkeeper, did well. More alert than his back four then, actually.
Was he given that onside? Was it offside? He was actually offside. But interesting, I mean, again, Brazil score a goal and all of a sudden their tails are up. Talk about the confidence as opposed to the pressure. Now they've scored the goal, the confidence is flowing within the side. And again, it's the pressure they had beforehand, just stifling perhaps that confidence.
Stojković trying to wake everybody up. A little bit of variety applied by Hulk this time. Willian came short for him. Luiz Gustavo. Marcelo, 3 or 4 touches to get it where he wanted it. Neymar. Let's see if Serbia can break as well as they did in the first half 3 or 4 times. It's Mitrovic having a run here. Run off it all too easily by Dani Alves. That's such a problem in this Serbia side, that front position. Đorđević, the Nantes striker, left out tonight, and I'm afraid Mitrovic not really showing an awful lot more authority when he's had the rare moments to show what he can do. That great chance missed in the first half, and just nowhere near strong enough here. Unlike Fred at the other end.
Fred again has just showed what a class outfit, a class player he is. I think it's interesting when you have these friendly matches leading into tournaments, and again for a side like Brazil who haven't spent that much time with each other, why the teams don't give away needless corners to practice defending corners. So far I think Serbia have had 1 corner in the game, so Brazil have only had 1 practice from a corner, defending a corner leading into a tournament.
You don't think you can use a training session to do that?
No, because training session is your own players, and you know you're not going to go 100%. Serbia will want to score an equaliser now. This would be a great opportunity for Brazil to practice defending a 1-0 lead from set plays.
A great opportunity about to beckon here for Fernandinho. Another, David, that you suggested to me at half-time might be required tonight to just energise it in the middle of the park a little bit.
Yeah, again, Paulinho and Oscar obviously brought off at half-time. Not really doing enough for me in the midfield there, and Willian, come on, to be fair, hasn't done a great deal either so far with regards to on-the-ball running. But I think Brazil could improve in that area for sure.
Paulinho to his captain. Willian. Scything run from him. Neymar takes over, sets to hit it, goes around the outside and overran it.
Willian on cue, wasn't it? Just as I said, he takes the ball and starts running with it, which was, again, I think what this game needs, what Brazil need.
Serbia clearly wilting here. Maybe it's the conditions to a degree. Stojković gets everything behind the hit from distance. But I'm afraid suddenly the battery looks a little bit run down for Serbia.
It'll be interesting to see what Serbia do with regards to defending, because you'd imagine, as in the first half, Brazil will have a lot of the ball, whether they start trying to close the Brazilians down or they stick to this rigid standoff approach.
All going Brazil's way suddenly.
And that's the problem with actually closing the Brazilian sides down. It only needs a touch and they'll go over, commit free kicks.
Paulinho trots off, and one wonders whether he's trotting into a role as a substitute for next week with that performance tonight. Fernandinho gets the opportunity to dislodge him here. We shouldn't overlook Ramirez chomping at the bit either.
We see there straight away, you got Fernandinho on the ball, wanting to control things, looking like he wants to be involved with getting Brazil forward. As I say, Paulinho just didn't seem to be doing that in the hour and a couple of minutes that he had. Willian again, looking aggressive in his approach.
Thiago Silva's really put himself about to good effect here early in this second period. Matic gives it to Marković. Tošić to Ivanović. A rare lapse by Ivanović tonight by his very high standards, and a very costly one in this game. Serbia have the free kick. Marković wanted to get on with it now. Rolled sideways by Petrović, out to Kolarov. At the stretch, Hulk. You're shaking your head at that. In Scolari's world, that might be deemed to be good play by Hulk. Back covering his full back and sending the game down the field.
They're winning the game 1-0, and I suppose getting the ball down the other end rather than trying to play out of a dangerous situation would make some kind of sense. Not, I'm sure, what the Brazilian fans would want to see. They'd rather see a few tricky skills, but the conditions don't allow that so much. Permit
me to take you back to 2001, and the only truly unthinkable event in the history of world football was a possibility. Brazil struggling to qualify for that World Cup. They turned to Scolari at his first press conference. He said, let's make something clear. This will not be pretty, but I guarantee I will get Brazil to the World Cup. And he did. And we all know what happened next.
I was going to say, he did a little bit more than just get them to the World Cup, didn't he? But again, the conditions aren't conducive for silky football.
Again, this is a Scolari team. He's never been about that in his whole career. And you know, people who think, David, that he might offer something different, it's just not on his CV. At his successful clubs in Brazil in the 1990s, they had a reputation for hardline, aggressive football. The problem is, of course, when it goes wrong, as it did at Chelsea, when you lose a few games, you haven't got the credit in the bank. You haven't got the style to point to. And maybe that's why they decided to make that brutal-looking decision to get rid of him after just a few months. Deflection on the shot. Stojković not troubled.
The difference, obviously, international football, I mean, you're pretty much playing for two tournaments. You're the World Tournament, the World Cup, and your Continental Cups. And essentially, they're the two tournaments you're playing for. They come around every 2 years, whereas with the likes of Chelsea, you should be top of the league week in, week out, and people don't suffer that for long, especially at the bigger clubs in these major European leagues.
He played 36 games as Chelsea boss, drew 11 of them. The other great scenario here, of course, with Scolari in Brazil, it's a kind of redemption, him getting the second chance to manage the national side after Menezes' reign came unstuck, really, from the time the youngsters failed to win the gold medal in the Olympic Games. Menezes, you felt the hand was about to drop onto his shoulder any day, and they turned again to Scolari, who'd been in the wilderness in relative terms. So in one sense it's a fairy tale for the romantics, but it's just not a romantic story on the field of play.
No, and as I say, as much as the romantic side of it, you'd like Brazil to win on their home turf, and again, the best international side in history to retain that World Cup. But I just think that the game has changed so much over the last 12 years. This Brazilian side that we're looking at is so fragmented. The players are literally all around the world now. and that sort of solidarity that they had in 2002 just isn't there. And I'm determined to get this view to print almost.
No, it's interesting. And the other point about this particular build-up is that they've not played competitive games except for the Confederations Cup, Copa America a couple of years back, of course, as well. But they don't need to qualify. And they've played a succession of globe-trotting friendlies all around the world.
And because of that, I think the team has been changed quite drastically from match to match. And again, we talk about continuity. Here's that Fred finish. I mean, that's just class, absolute class. I mean, he's in the keeper's probably thinking he's got to go low because he's lying on the floor, and he's managed to dig his right foot out from underneath him and put it in. It's a beautiful finish.
Is Scolari thinking about giving one or two others a run? Well, the first change here comes from Drulovic for Serbia, and Zoran Tošić, who no doubt disappointed to be left out of the starting lineup tonight. He is on now for the last 20. He's got a trick or two. The CSKA attacking midfield player, clever player, crafty. Got a goal in him too.
There's a little bit more organisation now. We've got Fernandinho on, he's holding that position.
Markovic out to Basta.
Gustavo's just sitting in front of the back four there. Just a bit more organised now, that Brazilian midfield.
First touch by Tošić, not the best, he's given it away, and then they made a present of it, Brazil. Matic on it now. Good again from Matic. Markovic kept it simple, Kolarov. Not the worst ball in. What a let-off for Brazil. Jokic got the header. It could again have been 1-1.
And that all stems from a mistake by Dani Alves. I mean, it's 3 mistakes he's made today in this game of note.
Júlio César is doing his very best to look a goalkeeper who was in command of that, who knew it was going to clip the outside of the upright. Well, it's a fine margin.
I think he was blowing that one wide. Oh, there you go. Bring him off. Yeah, that's the 3rd big mistake that Dani Alves has made. And once again, you know, if you're one of the sides going to play Brazil in the World Cup, Croatia, you'll be looking at it and think, well, there's an Achilles heel in this side.
And Maicon, even at his veteran stage, gets another little opportunity. Came on the other day against Panama. Replaces Dani Alves again. And who knows, maybe Maicon is back in the thoughts of the manager as a starter.
The idea that you can be too old, I think, having made my debut in the World Cup at 39 years old, I'd like to think that I'm proof that you're never quite too old. Maybe now at 43 I might be just a little bit too old for the World Cup, but Maicon's definitely got a chance. He's in the squad. Decent performance, especially today. And again, as we talked before the show, you know, the last game before the tournament starts properly, can it influence the manager on selection? Well, if you play badly and the guy who takes your place does well, and Maicon's got that chance now with Dani Alves. I mean, you wouldn't imagine Dani Alves not starting for Brazil, would you? But if he can't perform well enough in this game and Maicon can do something to impress the manager, then why not?
All he can do is keep knocking hard on the door, David, as he did all season with that great run of form with Roma, who did so well in Serie A. He rejuvenated his career, Maicon, at the age of 32.
32, there's me talking about age.
Exactly.
32, he's a youngster.
Don't tell him he's got no chance. Great run again by Markovic. He's still got it. Júlio César got down well this time and needed to.
It's a smart save by César. It's a fantastic run.
Really caught the eye tonight, Lazar Markovic.
It's a good run. It's a bit wide, he would like the shot, but again, César has to be up to it. And there's another mistake in midfield, in fact, by Fernandinho there.
Serbia have come back to life in this game after that rather shaky period around the hour mark when they went behind. Neymar. Hulk is in. It's 2 for Brazil, and it's beginning to look an awful lot easier than we know it has been. It won't count anyway. Long wait for the flag. Hulk thought he'd done it. He still thinks he's done it, but no.
I'd love to see this from the side, because I think Hulk was probably offside. In fact, neither of them were offside.
He was onside. Well onside.
Wow.
Kolarov was asleep this time, and that is a very fortunate break for Serbia.
As was the linesman asleep.
I don't even now think Hulk knows just how far onside he really was.
Oh, I thought he might have been slightly offside, if there's such a thing as offside. He was slightly pregnant, he can't be, but I thought he was perhaps just offside, but that is a terrible decision. But again, Neymar was given a little bit of freedom here, a little bit of freedom to pick the pass. And it's a long ball through as well. Again, not necessarily typical Brazilian style football. You would imagine Neymar would pick that ball up and try and take 2 or 3 players on, but instead, knowing the conditions aren't good for him.
Joe replaces Fred.
Fred's happy because he defends 1-0, then winning goal scorer.
Marković.
I'll be interested to see what Don Hutchison's thoughts are on this Brazilian defence, because before the game he was saying that they're possibly the best defence that will be appearing in the World Cup, and to be fair, I've not been overly impressed with them so far.
Matic to his club mate Ivanović. Now it's Basta of Udinese. Back by Jojic. Beginning to knock it around. Serbia with a bit of crispness again. And Matic finds another good little ball. Tošić just needed a bit too long to use it then. Ambitious by Willian, run off it by Basta. Matic. Oh yes, 3 or 4 times tonight he's shown that little class. Not the best of touches by Marković, but won back again sharply. It was Tošić who won it back. Classy as well, wasn't it? It's Kolarov now. Maicon to him. Petrović. Off the thigh of Luiz.
I've liked what I've seen from Willian so far, and he's come on, he's tried to be direct. So something was missing a little bit perhaps in the first half, although the Serbian side is a lot more spread out now. Being a goal down, any chance of getting back in this game, then they've got to obviously score a goal, and I think at 0-0 it was easier for them to defend deeper.
Fernandinho has run off it. It's Marković now. Out again to Kolarov. Perhaps fancies himself against Maicon a little bit. Wriggled free of him then. Matic.
There's a lot of space in that D.
Tošić looking to exploit it. Once of Manchester United, of course, when he was a much younger man, Tošić. The right-back Basta arrived a little bit late to help. Matic run off it. And Brazil just about keep Fernandinho. Maicon followed up. Scrappy indeed. Hulk gets into top gear. Nicely carried forward. Maicon. Stoutly done by Tošić. Had to get there and he did. Kolarov brushed aside by Luis Gustavo.
The Serbian side spread out a lot more compared to what they were in the first half.
Willian. Fernandinho. Certainly feels like an historic moment. Talking about a Brazilian squad with so many players who feature in our Premier League, doesn't it? That is a change. Echoing your point, really, about the way the catchment group has changed.
I think Brazil, in some ways, suffered from their success back in 2002. I mean, if you look at the 3 World Cups, 2002 going through 98, 94, 2 wins and a second place. I mean, they've suffered from that success because of the exodus of Brazilian-based players going around the world.
That was travelling from Luis Gustavo, who gets another opportunity. Thinks better of having another pot from that range. Fernandinho instead. Maicon. Yes, I think I'm right in saying, without checking, David. Hulk's ball in. Willian made a great run. Neymar left it to Joe, and Joe left it to Neymar. Here come Serbia with Tošić. Good early ball from him, and it's that same problem, isn't it? The lack of penetration at the front end of the Serbia side. Neymar again. Joe, sorry, Willian, back to Maicon. Fernandinho. Now it is Joe. Got a rousing reception, Joe, here tonight. This is his part of the country, of course. Born in Sao Paulo.
Brazil have struggled when they've been trying to pass away through, when I say pass, close, tight passing through the Serbian defensive lines. It's been very difficult, as we've seen. The goal that was disallowed and the goal they scored from have been quite long, direct balls.
Maxwell came on for Marcelo. Hulk.
I think they might be practicing their long-range shooting in the next training session as well, because the amount of shots that have been flying, and we're not just talking close wide, but quite a way wide, it's been quite poor, really.
And the one man who's been waiting for his opportunity in the warm-up games, Bernard, is going to get 10 minutes here. Mitrovic eventually has made way, and Filip Đorđević, whom he displaced in the starting lineup tonight, and also Gudeli here. The number 5 is not Đorđević, that's Gudeli, the AZ Alkmaar midfield man. Neymar comes off.
It makes sense if anyone was keeping an eye on Neymar for the last 10-15 minutes. He'd been pulling out challenges or not committing anywhere near the challenges. I think he'd run his course.
Do you think he's 100% fit?
I think he looks fit. He looks as if he didn't want to get involved in any challenges. And as you could argue, he might not be the most physical player anyway. At 1-0 with 10 minutes to go, why risk it in the conditions they're in? He's looked okay today. They say the conditions haven't been conducive for silky play. He set up the goal that was disallowed and stood, but it gives someone else an opportunity.
Well, the man, the youngster, 21-year-old Bernard, he's a former clubmate of Joe at Atletico Mineiro. He moved on to Shakhtar Donetsk, but of course, maybe thinking again about playing out there, given the political climate in the shop window, very much so.
Well, going back to the point you just said from 2002 and the amount of Brazilian players playing abroad now, you know, financially it makes sense. If you're one of the best players in the world and someone's offering you the rewards to go and play in Europe, you're going to do it.
I read somewhere over 500 Brazilians playing in top leagues across Europe.
It doesn't surprise me. What wouldn't surprise me either is 400 of them have probably got Brazilian caps.
But only a few of them can earn this man's approval.
Indeed, yeah. What they have here, this squad, is you know, man for man, a very special squad.
Serbia get a free kick here. Đorđević won it. And still a little bit of life in this game.
Again, I think this is great for preparation. You know, if this was 6-0 at this point, everyone would be starting to leave the ground and expecting the final whistle to go. Brazil have to hold on and get the win.
Basta.
Whatever disapproval some quarters might argue that the win wasn't the one that they were expecting, at least they've got the win. Serbia will be pushing all the way now to try and get that equaliser as well, so it's good for Brazil to have to do some defending.
David Luiz does some defending here in his own inimitable fashion. Thiago Silva. Gudeli backwards. And again, it goes backwards from Tošić via Ivanović. Be interesting for the Brazilian players as well, because
6.5 minutes plus injury time to finish this game off. The next time they know they're on a football pitch playing a game, it will be the World Cup. So again, it's the focus that the players need to keep for these last few remaining minutes.
Do you think you would have liked to play for Scolari? The things you've heard about him?
Club level, yeah, unless he managed the England side.
Well, that was on the agenda once, if you remember.
Why not? I think every other foreign manager was linked with England at some point. I mean, I've been fortunate to work with some very, very good foreign managers, each with their own idiosyncratic ways. I mean, Sven-Göran Eriksson was completely different to Fabio Capello, but I respected both of them very, very highly. The difficulty is when you've got such a large group of players, it's having the right manager for the majority of those players. And you know, any one style doesn't make you right or wrong if it's applied to the right players.
Willian.
Seems to be a lack of conviction now with the Brazilian side as well, because, as I say, with not long over 5 minutes left, you wonder how much they want to go and score that second goal. They don't need it.
Well, listen to what the crowd thinks about it, and the next most interesting thing would be asking Scolari what he thought about the way the crowd responded to Brazil trying to play the game out at 1-0. I think I'd enjoy listening to that. Seemed an arm in that from Maicon.
It's gone the other way.
Yeah, maybe there was more than one arm.
Well, Scolari was not looking too happy before the half-time break. And again, you know, having watched the 4-0 win against Panama, and his comments that he wasn't happy with the way that Brazil had played.
Against Matic.
I can't imagine he'd be too happy.
Branislav Petrovic is withdrawn. Made an impact, the one-time Blackburn Rovers man. And the player on in his place is Mudar, who came on as a sub late on against Panama also. One more to come from Drulovic. And it is Vulicevic. The right-back Basta, replaced by a Partizan Belgrade defender.
This is his third appearance.
Hogg takes the free kick for Brazil. Might now take the corner.
Ivanović losing his bearings somewhat there, or not aware of this freedom. I think that he could have left that and gone out for a goal kick.
Very alert to the threat then, Tošić. Got himself out there quickly.
Two old teammates there.
Yeah, well, they looked like it then, didn't they? Or maybe not. I'm glad. Lip reading, a bit mischievous, but it is the end of the season. Maybe you said, I'm glad you've gone. I never liked you anyway.
Exactly. To be fair to David Luiz, he's been the same all the way through the game, hasn't he? He's been from almost the kick. He's been at people, and again, I mean, if this is something that the start of the World Cup feeling from David Luiz, I think it's going to be a very exciting time.
Only threat is that he gets overexcited too soon. Willian, stopped this time by Ivanović. There is another all Chelsea battle, and the Chelsea midfield player takes it clear. Matic, emphasising again your point, David, the influence of the Premier League now on these squads. Nicely worked by Serbia. Three in the box. Turned to safety by Maicon. Did the right thing. Knew there was something behind him.
Just so narrow, the Brazilian defensive line there. And Don made a good point pre-show about the fullbacks that Brazil have, and obviously the spaces opening up behind them, but they look vulnerable, and again, against a better forward line, they would have conceded 1 or 2 goals by now.
This is one for the goalkeepers union. The interim boss Drulovic certainly handing the caps around, and Milan Lukac can also tell his grandchildren that he played against Brazil.
Another header for Serbia.
Another partisan gets on the field. I'm not saying it's a partisan selection by Drulovic, but he's certainly given 3 or 4 caps away here tonight.
Well, he's 28 years old and making his international debut, so...
Maybe he's a good tourist and it's a thank you to him.
Indeed, yeah. 2 minutes, thanks very much. I'm sure when he mentions it to his grandchildren that he won't mention it was the 87th minute, 88th minute when he came on, but all the same, it's a cap for him and he's got to be very pleased to be playing against.
As you know, maybe his best years are in front of him as a goalkeeper.
Absolutely, absolutely. I made 1 England appearance before I was 30.
Fernandinho. Out to Maicon. 32 years young now. Bernard, the 21-year-old, the baby of the squad, if you like. They're not doing much with it late on, Brazil. Hulk to Willian, who gets a free kick. Gets Brazil further forward.
It's interesting listening to the crowd's reaction, as you say, the hissing and the booing. The crowd arguably wanting the Brazilian side to be scoring 2 or 3 goals, but again, with the expectation on this team, it might be quite refreshing the fact that they haven't gone and scored the 5 or 6 goals. It might calm people down just enough for them to get into their stride once the tournament kicks off.
Thiago Silva.